The moment I saw my electricity bill had tripled for a cabin I barely visited, I knew something was terribly wrong. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found that cold October morning. A thick industrial cable snaking through my backyard, disappearing into the woods like a thief in the night. And when I finally traced it to its destination, the woman standing at the other end didn't just deny it. She called the police on me, screaming that I was the one stealing from her. My name is Melissa Harper, and this is the story of how one entitled neighbor thought she could drain my wallet dry until I decided enough was enough. Before I dive into everything that happened, let me tell you something important. This is Revenge Stories, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If you feel my words, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Help us build this community so we can bring more interesting and exciting stories for you from around the world. Your help is much appreciated. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, because understanding how much that cabin meant to me is essential to understanding why I fought so hard for it. That little log cabin, tucked away in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, wasn't just a weekend getaway. It was my dream realized, my reward for 15 long years of grinding away as a software engineer in Atlanta. The city had given me a career, that's true. It had given me opportunities and connections and a decent salary, but it had also given me chronic migraines from staring at screens in fluorescent-lit offices. Traffic nightmares that turned a 20-minute commute into 90 minutes of brake lights and exhaust fumes, and a kind of bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of coffee or vacation days could cure. By the time I turned 37, I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep living my entire life in a concrete box, breathing recycled air, watching the seasons change through office windows. I needed something real. Something mine, something that didn't come with a landlord or HOA dues or neighbors who complained when I played music past 9 p.m. So I started saving, aggressively. I cut out restaurant meals, canceled subscriptions I never used, stopped buying clothes I didn't need. Every bonus, every tax refund, every spare dollar went into a savings account labeled simply Mountain House. My coworkers thought I was crazy. My mother thought I was going through some kind of midlife crisis, but I didn't care. I had a vision, and I was going to make it happen. It took 3 years, but I finally saved enough for a down payment. I started working with a realtor who specialized in mountain properties, a kind woman named Susan, who understood exactly what I was looking for. Not something fancy or huge, just something peaceful. Something with trees and space and silence. We looked at probably 15 different properties over the course of 4 months. Some were too expensive. Some were too isolated, miles from the nearest paved road. Some were beautiful, but needed so much work they would have bankrupted me before I even moved in. I was starting to lose hope, starting to think maybe this dream was just a fantasy I'd built up in my head. And then Susan called me on a Thursday afternoon in late June. "Melissa," she said, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "I just got a new listing this morning. 3-bedroom log cabin, 6 acres, incredible mountain views. The owner passed away recently, and the family wants to sell quickly. It's under your budget. You need to see this." I left work early that Friday and drove straight up. The moment I turned onto that gravel driveway and saw the cabin nestled between 2 ridges, surrounded by towering pines and oaks, with a wraparound porch and a view that seemed to stretch forever, I knew. I just knew. The cabin itself was beautifully rustic. Exposed wooden beams, a massive stone fireplace, wide plank hardwood floors that creaked softly when you walked. The kitchen was outdated, sure, and the bathrooms needed some love, but the bones was solid. The previous owner had clearly cared about the place. You could see it in the careful craftsmanship, the way the porch railing had been sanded smooth, the way the windows had been positioned to capture the morning light. The owner was a retired carpenter, Susan told me as we walked through. Built a lot of this himself over the years. His kids live out of state and don't want to maintain it. They're motivated to sell. I didn't even negotiate. The asking price was fair, and I was terrified someone else would swoop in and take it if I hesitated. I put in an offer that same day. By Monday, it was accepted. By the end of July, the cabin was mine. I remember standing on that porch the day I got the keys, just breathing in the mountain air. It smelled like pine and earth and possibility. The silence was profound, the kind of silence you never get in the city. No car alarms, no sirens, no neighbors arguing through thin walls. Just wind in the trees and birds calling and the distant rush of a creek I couldn't quite see yet, but could definitely hear. I spent that entire first weekend at the cabin doing absolutely nothing productive. I just existed in the space. I sat on the porch with a book, I walked the property lines, discovering an old stone wall that must have been there for 100 years. I watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real, deep, uncomplicated peace. The first month of ownership was a honeymoon period. I drove up every Friday evening, my car packed with supplies, my mind already shifting into weekend mode before I even hit the highway. I'd arrive as the sun was setting, unlock the door, light a fire in the fireplace even though it was summer, and just decompress. Sometimes I'd invite a friend. Most times I went alone, and I loved those solo weekends the most. There's something powerful about being completely alone in nature, about realizing you don't need constant stimulation or company to feel whole. But I'm a practical person by nature, and I knew the cabin needed work. The previous owner had been elderly and hadn't been able to keep up with maintenance in his final years. The paint was peeling in places. The porch boards were warped. The kitchen faucet leaked. The bathroom grout was crumbling. And most importantly, the electrical system needed a thorough inspection. I'm an engineer, so I understand systems. I understand how things work and how they can fail. And old cabins, especially ones built decades ago, can have electrical systems that are functional but outdated, even dangerous. I wasn't about to take any chances. The last thing I wanted was to be up there in the middle of winter and have a fire start because of faulty wiring. So one of the first things I did was hire a licensed electrician. His name was Tom, a local guy in his 50s who'd been wiring mountain homes for 30 years. He came recommended by Susan, and he was thorough. He spent an entire day going through the cabin, testing outlets, checking the breaker box, examining the meter, inspecting every connection. His final assessment was mostly good. The main wiring was solid, properly grounded, up to code. But the breaker box was old, and he recommended upgrading it. He also suggested installing a new digital electric meter, the kind that's more accurate and easier to monitor. And he wanted to replace about half the outlets because they were worn and loose. Better safe than sorry, Tom said. Especially up here. You don't want to lose heat in January because a breaker trips and you can't figure out which one. I agreed to everything. The work took 2 days and cost me about $1,500, but it was worth every penny. When Tom was done, I had a brand new breaker box, clearly labeled. All new outlets that fit plugs snugly, and a digital meter that I could actually read without squinting. He even installed an outdoor outlet on the backside of the cabin, one with a weatherproof cover, in case I ever wanted to use power tools outside or plug in some outdoor lights. Just make sure you keep this covered when you're not using it, Tom advised, tapping the outlet cover. Weather up here can be rough. You don't want moisture getting in. I thanked him, paid him, and felt good knowing the cabin's electrical system was safe and reliable. Everything was perfect. For a while. I fell into a comfortable rhythm. I'd drive up most Friday evenings, stay through Sunday afternoon, then head back to the city for the work week. I'd spend my mountain weekends hiking, reading, cooking simple meals, working on small improvement projects. I repainted the kitchen a soft sage green. I refinished the hardwood floors in the living room. I replaced the old, stained bathroom tiles with clean white subway tiles. I hung curtains, bought cozy furniture, filled the place with books and blankets and everything that made it feel like mine. My friends started calling it Melissa's Mountain Escape, and a few of them would come up for weekends. We'd drink wine on the porch, hike the trails, tell stories by the fire. It became this sacred space, this refuge from the chaos of everyday life. People would leave saying they felt renewed, recharged. That's exactly what I'd hoped for. For the first 2 months, everything was blissful. My electric bills were exactly what I expected. Modest, reasonable, reflecting the fact that I was only there on weekends and wasn't running much beyond the fridge, a few lights, and the occasional heater when the nights got cold. Then September came. The bill that month was higher than I expected. Not wildly high, but noticeable. It was $87, whereas August had been $53. I looked at it, frowned slightly, and tried to figure out why. Had I left the heater running one weekend? Had I forgotten to turn off lights when I left? It was possible. I'd been distracted that last trip, dealing with a work crisis, via email, even while trying to relax. I shrugged it off. These things happen. I'd be more careful. But then October's bill arrived, and my stomach dropped. $142. I stared at the number on my phone screen, reading it 3 times to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. $142 for a cabin I'd visited exactly twice that month, both times just for the weekend. I'd been meticulous about turning everything off before leaving. I'd unplugged the coffee maker, turned off the water heater, killed all the lights. There was absolutely no reason the bill should be that high. I called the power company immediately. The customer service representative was polite, but not particularly helpful. "Ma'am, the meter reading is accurate according to our records. If you're concerned about high usage, you might have an appliance that's malfunctioning or drawing more power than expected." "I just had the entire electrical system inspected and updated 2 months ago," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. Everything was fine. "Sometimes issues develop over time. You might want to have someone take another look. Can you tell me what time of day the power is being used most?" "We don't track that level of detail with standard meters, ma'am. If you'd like to upgrade to a smart meter with hourly tracking, I can put in a request." "How long does that take?" "Usually 4 to 6 weeks. I hung up, annoyed, but not yet alarmed. Maybe there was something I'd missed. Maybe the new fridge was pulling more power than expected. Maybe there was a short somewhere. I made a mental note to go through everything more carefully on my next visit. But when November's bill came in at $273, alarm bells started screaming in my head. $273. That was more than my entire electric bill at my Atlanta apartment, and I lived there full time. Something was very, very wrong. I immediately started going through my records, trying to piece together a pattern. I looked at my calendar to see exactly which weekends I'd been at the cabin. I looked at the weather reports to see if maybe I'd run the heater more than I realized. I even called Tom, the electrician, and asked if there was any possibility something he'd installed was causing a problem. "Not unless your fridge is broken or you've got a serious short somewhere," he said. But I tested everything before I left. It was all working perfectly. "Could there be a problem with the meter?" I asked. "Could it be reading wrong?" "It's possible, but unlikely. Those digital meters are pretty accurate. If you want, I can come up and do another inspection." "Yes," I said immediately. "Please, as soon as possible." Tom came up that following Saturday. I met him at the cabin, feeling anxious and frustrated. I watched as he went through the entire system again, testing outlets, checking the breaker box, examining connections. He spent extra time looking at the meter, watching it, taking readings. And that's when he noticed something odd. "Melissa," he called from outside. "Come here for a second." I joined him by the meter. He was crouching down, studying it closely. "Turn off all your breakers," he said. I went inside and systematically flipped every breaker to the off position. The cabin went dark and silent. Then I walked back outside. Tom was still watching the meter, and it was still running. Not fast, but definitely running. The digital display was counting upward, and the small LED light was blinking steadily. "That shouldn't be happening," Tom said quietly. "If all your breakers are off, this meter should be completely still." A cold feeling washed over me. "What does that mean?" He stood up, his expression serious. "It means something is drawing power from your system that's not going through your breakers, which means it's pulling from an outside source." "Like what?" He walked slowly around the perimeter of the cabin, and I followed. When we reached the back corner, near the outdoor outlet he'd installed, he stopped. The weatherproof cover was open, and plugged into the outlet was a heavy-duty extension cord, the industrial kind with a thick orange jacket, the kind you use for power tools or RVs. Tom and I stared at it in silence for a long moment. "Did you plug this in?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "I've never used that outlet." He crouched down and touched the cord. "It's warm." "It's actively carrying a load." I felt a surge of anger so strong it made my hands shake. Someone is stealing my electricity. Tom followed the cord with his eyes. It stretched across the ground, weaving between trees, and disappeared down the slope into the dense forest below. "You need to call the sheriff," Tom said. "Right now." But I didn't call, not yet, because first, I needed to know exactly who was doing this and for how long. I needed proof. I needed to see it with my own eyes. "Help me follow this cord," I said. Tom hesitated. "Melissa, maybe we should—" "I need to know," I interrupted. "I need to see where it goes." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "All right, but we're not confronting anyone. We're just looking." "Agreed?" "Agreed." We started walking, following the orange cord as it snaked through the underbrush. The ground was uneven, covered in roots and rocks and patches of fallen leaves. I had to watch my footing carefully to avoid tripping. The cord led us downhill, winding between pine trees and around boulders. It had clearly been here for a while. In some places, leaves and pine needles had piled up around it. In others, the ground beneath was worn smooth, like someone had walked this path many times. My anger grew with every step. Whoever was doing this had been doing it for months. This wasn't some desperate, one-time theft. This was calculated, ongoing, deliberate. We walked for probably a quarter mile. The slope grew steeper, and I could hear water running somewhere below. Then the trees opened up into a small clearing, and I saw it. A single wide trailer, faded and weathered, sitting in the middle of a patchy dirt yard. The siding was a dull blue-gray, streaked with rust stains. The metal roof was corroded. The front porch sagged on one side, held up by cinder blocks. Trash bags and old tires were piled near the side. It looked like it had been there for decades, slowly rotting into the earth. And the orange cord? It ran straight through an open window into the trailer. Tom whistled low. "Well, there's your answer." I stood there, staring, my heart pounding in my chest. I'd found the thief. Now I needed to figure out what to do about it. Before I could say anything, the trailer door banged open. And out stepped a woman who would change everything. She was probably in her mid-40s, though the sun and cigarettes had aged her beyond her years. Her hair was bleached blonde, fried and frizzy, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast, a stained pink hoodie, and gray sweatpants with holes in the knees. She had the kind of posture that radiated aggression. Shoulders back, chin up, hands on hips. The moment she saw us standing at the edge of her clearing, her face twisted into something ugly. "Who the hell are you?" she barked, her voice sharp and loud enough to scatter birds from the trees. I stepped forward, keeping my voice calm but firm. "I'm Melissa Harper. I own the cabin up the hill, and I'm here because someone's been stealing my electricity." She let out a harsh, bitter laugh that had no humor in it. "Stealing? Are you kidding me right now? That's community power." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Community power," she repeated slowly, like she was explaining something to a child. "This is a mountain community. People share resources. That's how it works up here. That's how it's always worked." I stared at her, genuinely stunned by the audacity. "No, that's not how it works. That's my private property. That's my electric meter. That's my bill. You're stealing from me." Her face flushed red, and she took several aggressive steps toward us. "I'm not stealing anything. I've been using that outlet for months, and nobody ever said a word about it. You're just some city person who doesn't understand how mountain folk live." "I understand theft," I said, my voice hardening. "And I understand trespassing. That cord is plugged into my property without my permission. That's illegal." She jabbed a finger toward me, her voice rising to a shout. "You need to back off. I have just as much right to that power as you do." "No," I said firmly, not backing down an inch. "You don't." Tom stepped slightly in front of me, his voice calm but protective. "Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble, but the law is pretty clear. That's her outlet, her meter, her property. If you don't have written permission, this is theft." The woman's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought she might actually take a swing at one of us. But then her expression shifted to something almost victimized, wounded. "My power got shut off," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "Months ago. The power company is crooked. They overcharge everyone. I couldn't afford it. I was desperate. I needed heat. I needed lights. What was I supposed to do? Freeze to death?" For a split second, I felt a flicker of sympathy. I understood desperation. I understood struggle. But then I thought about those bills. Hundreds of dollars I'd paid because of her theft. Money I'd worked hard for. Money she'd stolen without a second thought. "That's not my problem," I said quietly. "If you needed help, you should have asked. You should have talked to social services, or a church, or neighbors. You don't solve your problems by stealing from other people." Her face transformed instantly, from wounded to enraged. "Neighbors? You think people up here help each other? You think anyone cares? No. You take care of yourself. That's what I did. I took care of myself." "By taking from me," I said. "You're barely even here," she screamed, her voice going shrill. "You're some weekend warrior who doesn't even need that cabin. I live here full time. I need it more than you do." Tom stepped forward again. "Ma'am, it doesn't matter. It's still theft." She turned her fury on him. "And who the hell are you? Her bodyguard?" "I'm the electrician who installed that outlet," Tom said calmly, "and I'm a witness to this conversation. So I'd suggest you think very carefully about what you say next." For a moment, the clearing was completely silent, except for the wind in the trees and the distant sound of running water. Then the woman smiled. It was a cold, mean smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Go ahead," she said, her voice dropping to something almost menacing. "Call the cops. See what happens. I'll just tell them you're harassing me. I'll tell them you trespassed on my property, threatened me. They'll believe me. I've lived here for 20 years. You're just some outsider." I pulled out my phone. "Then let's find out." Her eyes widened, and I saw genuine panic flicker across her face. But she rallied quickly, puffing herself up again. "Fine," she spat. "Call them. I'll call them too, and we'll see who they believe." And before I could dial, she pulled out her own phone and started screaming into it. 911. Yes, I need help. There are 2 people on my property threatening me. They're saying I stole from them. I'm scared. Please send someone immediately. They're very aggressive. I don't know what they're going to do. I stared at her, absolutely floored by the performance. She was good. Really good. Her voice was shaking. Her eyes were wide. She even managed to sound genuinely frightened. Tom and I exchanged a glance. This was about to get complicated. I calmly dialed 911 myself and explained the situation to the dispatcher. Theft of utilities, trespassing, months of unauthorized use. I gave my address and the approximate location of the trailer. The dispatcher assured me a deputy would be there shortly. While we waited, the woman paced back and forth in front of her trailer, alternating between muttering to herself and shooting us venomous glares. Tom and I stayed at the edge of the clearing, not moving closer, not saying anything. There was nothing to say. The evidence was right there, the cord running from my property into her home. About 15 minutes later, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A sheriff's cruiser made its way down the narrow dirt road that led to the trailer. A deputy stepped out, a middle-aged man with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent years dealing with mountain disputes. His name tag read Deputy Garrett. "Afternoon," he said, his tone neutral and professional. "I understand there's a dispute about electricity?" "Yes, sir," I said, stepping forward respectfully. "My name is Melissa Harper. I own the cabin up the hill." I pointed in the general direction. "For the past 3 months, my electric bills have been skyrocketing even though I'm barely there. Today I discovered why." I gestured to the orange cord running across the ground into the trailer. "That cord is plugged into an outlet on my property. It's been there for months. I never gave permission for anyone to use it." Deputy Garrett followed the cord with his eyes, then looked at the woman. "Ma'am, is that your cord?" She crossed her arms defensively. "That's community power. Everyone up here shares. She's making a big deal out of nothing." "Community power?" the deputy repeated, his eyebrows rising slightly. "Ma'am, I've been working this area for 12 years. There's no such thing as community power. Do you have written permission from Miss Harper to use her outlet?" The woman's face went red. "I don't need written permission. This is how it's always been. Mountain folk help each other." "Helping requires consent," Deputy Garrett said firmly. "If this outlet is on her property and she didn't give you permission, that's theft of utilities." "This is ridiculous," the woman shouted. "She's lying. She's making this up because she doesn't like me." "I don't even know you," I said flatly. "I just want you to stop stealing from me." "I'm not stealing." Deputy Garrett held up a hand. "Ma'am, let's calm down. I need to see some identification from both of you." I handed over my driver's license immediately. The woman hesitated, then stomped into her trailer and came back with a worn wallet, pulling out her ID and shoving it at the deputy like it was a weapon. He glanced at both IDs, then handed them back. "All right, Miss Harper, can you prove you own the property where that outlet is located?" "I can," I said. I pulled out my phone and showed him the digital copy of my property deed, the purchase documents, and the electric bill with my name on it. I also have 3 months of bills showing usage spikes that don't match my actual time at the property. He studied the documents carefully, scrolling through the photos. Then he looked at the woman. "Ma'am, can you show me any documentation that you have permission to use that electricity?" She shifted on her feet, her eyes darting. I don't have it on me. It was a verbal agreement." "With whom?" "With the previous owner," she said quickly. "He said I could use it. He was a nice man, not like her." Deputy Garrett's expression didn't change, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. "The previous owner passed away 4 months ago. Miss Harper has owned this property since July. Did you ever ask her permission?" The woman's mouth opened, then closed. She looked trapped. "No," I answered for her. "She never asked. She never spoke to me. She snuck onto my property and stole from me without saying a word. That's because you're never there." She screamed. You don't even use that place. You're some rich city woman who treats it like a toy. I needed that power. Needing something doesn't give you the right to steal it, Deputy Garrett said calmly. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to unplug that cord right now. No, she said stubbornly, crossing her arms. I won't. His expression hardened. Then I'm going to have to issue you a citation for theft of utilities and trespassing. Her eyes went wide. You can't do that. I can, and I will. She looked at me, her face full of pure hatred. This isn't over, you hear me? This isn't over. Actually, I said calmly, it is. Deputy Garrett issued the citation right there. The woman, whose name I learned was Brenda Howell, refused to sign it, screaming about injustice and discrimination and corrupt law enforcement. The deputy remained professional and calm through the entire tirade. Ms. Howell, you have 24 hours to disconnect that cord, he said firmly. If it's still connected after that, I'll be back with a warrant, and you'll be facing criminal charges. Brenda slammed the door to her trailer so hard I thought the whole structure might collapse. Deputy Garrett turned to me and Tom. You two should head back up. And Miss Harper, I'd recommend documenting everything. Take photos, save your bills, keep records of when you're at the property. If this escalates, you'll want all that evidence. I will, I said, thank you. And one more thing, he added, his voice dropping slightly. Brenda Howell has a history. Petty theft, harassment, a few disorderly conduct charges. She doesn't take losing well. So keep your eyes open. A chill ran through me, but I nodded. Understood. Tom and I walked back up the hill in silence. When we reached my cabin, he unplugged the orange cord from my outlet and tossed it onto the ground. You might want to put a lock on this, he said, pointing to the outlet. Just to be safe. I'll get one this week, I promised. After Tom left, I sat on my porch for a long time, staring out at the mountains. The peace I'd felt here for months was shattered. Now every sound made me tense. Every shadow in the trees felt threatening. But I refused to be scared away from my own property. I spent the rest of the day photographing everything, writing down a detailed timeline, organizing my bills. I wanted to be prepared for whatever came next, because deep down I knew Brenda's words had been a promise, not a threat. This wasn't over. I drove back to Atlanta that evening, feeling unsettled in a way I hadn't experienced in years. The mountains, which had always represented escape and peace, now felt tainted. Every time I thought about Brenda Howell's face, twisted with rage. Her voice screeching, "This isn't over," a knot tightened in my stomach. But I'm not someone who runs from problems. I'd worked too hard for that cabin, invested too much of myself into it. I wasn't going to let one entitled thief drive me away. The next morning, I called a security company in Asheville and ordered 3 outdoor cameras with motion detection and night vision. They could be installed within the week. I also ordered a heavy-duty lockbox for the outdoor outlet, the kind that requires a key to open. If Brenda or anyone else wanted to steal my electricity again, they have to work a lot harder for it. I went through my work week in a fog of distraction. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a call from Deputy Garrett, telling me Brenda had violated the order. But the 24-hour deadline came and went without incident. On Thursday evening, I got a call from Tom. "Hey, Melissa. I was up near your place today working on another cabin. Thought I'd swing by and check on that outlet." "And?" I asked, my heart rate picking up. "The cord's gone. She unplugged it." Relief washed through me. "Really?" "Yeah. But," he paused, "there are fresh footprints all around your property. Recent ones. And it looks like someone tried the door handle." Oh, the relief evaporated instantly. "Someone tried to break in?" "I can't say for sure. The door's still locked, nothing's damaged, but the ground right in front of it is all scuffed up, like someone was standing there for a while." "Oh," my hands tightened around the phone. "Did you call Deputy Garrett?" The idea of being up there, alone, knowing Brenda was just down the hill, angry and unpredictable, made my skin crawl. I'll bring a friend, I said, finally. Smart. Call me if you need anything. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at the wall. This was escalating. Brenda wasn't just angry. She was actively trying to frighten me. She wanted me to feel unsafe, wanted me to abandon the property so she could go back to stealing whatever she wanted. Well, I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I called my best friend, Lauren, and explained everything that had been happening. Lauren was a corporate lawyer with zero tolerance for nonsense, and a protective streak a mile wide. Absolutely, I'm coming with you this weekend, she said immediately. And we're stopping at REI first. I'm getting us both pepper spray. You think that's necessary? Melissa, this woman tried your door. Yes, it's necessary. Saturday morning, Lauren picked me up at 6 a.m. We stopped at REI, where she insisted on buying not just pepper spray, but also a loud personal alarm and a tactical flashlight that could double as a weapon if needed. You're being paranoid, I said, though I appreciated it. I'm being prepared, she corrected. There's a difference. We arrived at the cabin around 9:30. The security company van was already waiting in the driveway. 2 technicians got out and introduced themselves, Mike and Derek, both professional and efficient. We'll have you set up in about 3 hours, Mike said. 3 cameras, all recording to cloud storage, motion alerts sent directly to your phone. You'll be able to check the feeds anytime from anywhere. Perfect, I said. While they worked, Lauren and I did a thorough inspection of the property. Everything seemed fine. The lockbox I'd ordered for the outlet had arrived, and I installed it myself, testing it multiple times to make sure it was secure. The orange cord was indeed gone, though I could still see the faint impression in the dirt where it had lain for months. We checked all the windows and doors. Everything was locked tight, no signs of forced entry. But Tom had been right about the footprints. There were several sets near the front door, far more than there should have been. Someone had been here. Multiple times, probably. This is creepy, Lauren said, crouching to examine them. These look fresh, like within the last day or 2. I know. She stood up and put her hands on her hips, surveying the tree line. Where does this Brenda woman live exactly? I pointed down the slope, about a quarter mile that way. You can't see it from here, but there's a trail. Have you seen her since the deputy gave her the citation? No, I haven't been back until today. Lauren's expression hardened. Well, if she shows up while we're here, she's going to regret it. I almost smiled. Lauren was 5'4" and barely 100 pounds, but she had the presence of someone twice her size. I didn't doubt she'd stand her ground. By early afternoon, the cameras were installed and operational. Mike showed me how to access the feeds on my phone, how to adjust the motion sensitivity, how to download and save footage if I needed it for evidence. These cameras have excellent night vision, he explained, so even if someone comes around after dark, you'll have clear footage. And the motion alerts are instantaneous. Your phone will ping the second something moves in front of the camera. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful. This makes me feel a lot safer. After the technicians left, Lauren and I spent the rest of the afternoon reinforcing other security measures. We installed a heavy-duty deadbolt on the back door. We checked every window lock and replaced 2 that were loose. We even moved some furniture around inside so that anyone looking through the windows wouldn't be able to see the full layout of the cabin. If she tries anything, Lauren said, she'll have to work for it. That evening, we made dinner and sat on the porch with a bottle of wine, watching the sun set over the mountains. For a little while, it almost felt normal again, peaceful. But then, just as the last light faded and darkness settled over the ridge, I heard something. A branch snapping. Not close, but not far either. Somewhere down the slope, in the direction of Brenda's trailer. Lauren heard it too. She set down her wine glass and listened. Another snap, then the rustle of someone moving through underbrush. Someone's out there, Lauren whispered. My heart started pounding. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. The rear camera, which faced the direction of the sound, showed nothing but trees and darkness. But then I saw it, a flicker of movement just at the edge of the frame. Someone was there, watching. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm. "We should go inside." Lauren nodded and followed me in. I locked the door behind us and closed all the curtains. Then I checked the camera feeds again. The figure was still there, just barely visible in the night vision, standing behind a tree about 50 feet from the cabin. They weren't moving, just standing, watching. "Is that her?" Lauren asked, looking over my shoulder. "I can't tell. The resolution isn't good enough." We watched for several minutes. The figure remained completely still, like a statue. Then, abruptly, they turned and disappeared back into the woods. My hands were shaking. "I'm calling Deputy Garrett." I explained what we'd seen and sent him the footage. He called back within 10 minutes. "Miss Harper, I'm sending a unit up there right now. Lock your doors and stay inside until they arrive." "We will." "And, Miss Harper, I'm going to recommend you file for a restraining order against Brenda Howe. This behavior constitutes harassment." "I'll do it first thing Monday." 20 minutes later, 2 sheriff's cruisers arrived. Deputy Garrett and another deputy, a younger woman named Deputy Chen, swept the property with powerful flashlights. They followed the trail down toward Brenda's place and were gone for almost half an hour. When they came back, Deputy Garrett's expression was grim. "Ms. Howell claims she was inside her trailer all evening. Says she hasn't been anywhere near your property." "She's lying," I said. "I have footage." "I know, and we'll be using that when we file the report. But without catching her in the act, we can't arrest her tonight. However, I strongly suggest you proceed with that restraining order. Between the theft, the trespassing, and now this stalking behavior, you have more than enough grounds." "I will." He handed me his card. "If anything else happens, call immediately. We'll have patrols coming through this area more frequently now." After the deputies left, Lauren and I barely slept. We took turns keeping watch, checking the camera feeds every few minutes. The figure never returned. But the knowledge that someone had been out there, watching us in the dark, made the cabin feel less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. Sunday morning, we packed up and headed back to Atlanta. I felt defeated, angry, violated, but more than anything, I felt determined. Brenda wanted me gone. She wanted me scared enough to abandon my property, my dream, my peace, and I refused to give her that power. Monday morning, I took a personal day from work and drove to the county courthouse. I filed for a restraining order against Brenda Howell, attaching all the evidence I'd collected. The electric bills, the photos of the cord, the security camera footage, Deputy Garrett's incident reports, everything. The clerk reviewed the documents and nodded approvingly. "You have a strong case. The judge will review this and likely grant a temporary order within 48 hours. A hearing will be scheduled for the permanent order." "How long does that take?" "Usually 2 to 3 weeks. And in the meantime?" "The temporary order is legally binding. If she violates it, she can be arrested immediately." That gave me some relief. At least there would be legal consequences now. I also scheduled an appointment with a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Hernandez, who specialized in property disputes and harassment cases. She reviewed everything I brought and whistled low. "Ms. Harper, you've done an excellent job documenting all of this. Most people don't think to gather this much evidence." "I'm an engineer," I said. "I'll understand systems and proof." She smiled. "It shows, based on what I'm seeing here, you have grounds not only for a restraining order, but also for a civil suit to recover the stolen electricity costs, plus damages for harassment and emotional distress." "I don't want money," I said. "I just want her to leave me alone." "I understand. But sometimes the threat of financial consequences is the only thing that makes people like Miss Howell take things seriously. Think about it. I left her office feeling more empowered than I had in days. I had the law on my side. I had evidence. I had professionals helping me. But the real test came Wednesday evening. I was home in Atlanta, making dinner, when my phone exploded with motion alerts. All 3 cameras at once. I grabbed my phone with wet hands and pulled up the feeds. My blood ran cold. Someone was at the cabin, not lurking in the trees this time, actually on the property, at the front door, trying to force it open. The figure was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, face obscured, but the body language was aggressive, determined. They were jimmying something into the doorframe, a crowbar maybe, trying to pry it open. I immediately called 911, my voice shaking. Is that? Someone's breaking into my cabin. I'm watching it happen on my security cameras right now. I gave the address and stayed on the line, watching helplessly as the figure worked at the door. The new deadbolt was holding, thank God, but they weren't giving up. Then, suddenly they stopped. Their head turned toward the driveway. Blue and red lights flashed across the camera feed. The figure dropped the crowbar and bolted into the woods. A deputy's cruiser pulled up, and I watched as 2 officers jumped out and gave chase. But the figure disappeared into the darkness, too fast, too familiar with the terrain. Deputy Chen called me a few minutes later. "Miss Harper, they got away. But we found the crowbar they dropped. We're dusting it for prints. And we have your camera footage, which is clear enough to use as evidence." "Was it Brenda?" I asked. "The height and build match her brother, Dale. He's got a record too. Assault, B&E, drug possession. We'll be paying him a visit." "Her brother?" My mind reeled. "She sent her brother to break into my cabin?" "We can't prove that yet, but yes, it appears so." I felt sick. This wasn't just Brenda anymore. She'd recruited help. This was becoming dangerous. "Miss Harper, I need to be honest with you," Deputy Chen said carefully. "This situation is escalating. These people are getting bolder. I strongly recommend you don't stay at the cabin alone until we can make arrests." "I won't," I said quietly. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking the cameras obsessively, expecting to see that hooded figure return. But the property remained quiet. The next afternoon, Deputy Garrett called. "We picked up Dale Howell an hour ago. The prints on the crowbar match his. He's being charged with attempted breaking and entering. And we brought Brenda in for questioning." "Did she admit to anything?" "No. She claims she had no idea her brother was at your property. Says he must have done it on his own. But we're not buying it. We've got evidence of her stalking you, and now her brother attempts a break-in? That's not coincidence." "What happens now?" "Dale's in custody, bail hearing tomorrow. Brenda's being released, but the restraining order has been approved. She's legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of your property. If she violates it, she goes to jail. And if she sends someone else to do her dirty work, then we charge her as an accessory. Miss Harper, we're taking this seriously. These people are on our radar now." I thanked him and hung up, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering dread. They were in the system now. There were consequences, but I knew Brenda. She wouldn't stop until she'd been hurt worse than she'd hurt me. Over the next 2 weeks, things were relatively quiet. The cameras showed no activity except for wildlife and the occasional patrol car. Dale was denied bail due to his record. Brenda apparently left the mountain entirely, or at least she wasn't visible. I went back to the cabin once, but only with Lauren and another friend, Marcus, a former Marine, who'd insisted on coming along just in case. We spent the weekend reinforcing security even further. Better locks, motion sensor lights, even a doorbell camera. The permanent restraining order hearing was scheduled for early December. Patricia, my lawyer, assured me it would be granted based on the evidence. But the day before the hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" Heavy breathing, then a woman's voice, low and venomous. "You think you've won. You think your cameras and your lawyers and your police friends are going to protect you." It was Brenda. "Don't call me again," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know people. People who don't care about restraining orders. People who can make your life very, very difficult. Is that a threat? She laughed, cold and bitter. Take it however you want, but you should have minded your own business. You should have just let me use that damn outlet. Now you're gonna regret it. The line went dead. My hands were shaking. I immediately called Deputy Garrett and reported the call. He was furious. That's a direct violation of the restraining order. We're gonna pick her up tonight. And Miss Harper, record every call, every message, everything. We're going to bury her with evidence. True to his word, Brenda was arrested that evening for violating the restraining order and making threatening communications. This time, bail was set high enough that she couldn't afford it. She stayed in county jail. The hearing the next day was anticlimactic. The judge reviewed all the evidence: the theft, the stalking, the attempted break-in by her brother, the threatening phone call, and granted the permanent restraining order without hesitation. Ms. Howell, the judge said sternly, you have engaged in a pattern of harassment and criminal behavior that cannot be tolerated. This order is permanent. If you violate it even once, you will serve significant jail time. Do you understand? Brenda, wearing an orange jumpsuit and looking haggard, just glared at me from across the courtroom. But she nodded. Yes, Your Honor, she muttered. After the hearing, Patricia pulled me aside. You should also know, the district attorney is moving forward with criminal charges for the utility theft. Between that and the restraining order violation, Brenda's looking at substantial fines and possible jail time. Good, I said, and I meant it. December passed quietly. Brenda was eventually released from jail, but apparently left the area entirely. I heard through Dorothy, the kind older woman who lived up the ridge, that Brenda had moved in with relatives somewhere in Tennessee. Good riddance, Dorothy said. That woman was a plague on this mountain. Dale, Brenda's brother, took a plea deal. 6 months in county jail, plus probation. When he got out, he also left the area. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I spent Christmas at the cabin, this time with my mother and sister. We cooked a huge meal, decorated a tree, sat by the fire telling stories. It felt magical again, like the place was mine again. My electric bills returned to normal, $50 to $60 a month, exactly what they should be. The security cameras stayed up, the locks stayed reinforced, but slowly, over the winter and into spring, I started to relax again. I started inviting friends up regularly. I started hiking the trails without looking over my shoulder. I started sleeping peacefully again. By the time summer came around, almost a full year after I bought the place, the cabin truly felt like home. My sanctuary, my escape. The place I'd always dreamed it would be. I learned a lot from that experience. About boundaries, about standing up for yourself, about not letting fear or intimidation control your life. Brenda Howell thought she could bully me into submission. She thought because she'd been on that mountain longer, because she was louder and meaner and more willing to break the rules, she had more right to my resources than I did. She was wrong. And the truth is, people like Brenda exist everywhere. In neighborhoods, in workplaces, in HOAs, in families. People who believe the rules don't apply to them. People who take and take and take without ever considering the cost to others. People who think volume equals validity. But here's what I learned. Documentation defeats drama every single time. Brenda screamed. She lied. She sent her brother to intimidate me. She made threats. But I had evidence. Photos, bills, camera footage, police reports. A clear, chronological record of everything she'd done. And when it came time to face a judge, evidence won. It always does. I also learned something else, something maybe even more important. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to scream or threaten or escalate. You just have to be persistent, thorough, unwilling to back down. Quiet courage, as I like to think of it. The kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, but doesn't yield either. Because at the end of the day, People like Brenda rely on you giving up. They rely on you being too tired, too scared, too busy to fight back. They count on your silence. But when you refuse to be silent, when you document and report and follow through, they crumble. Every single time. It's been almost 2 years now since I bought that cabin. 2 years since I discovered someone was stealing from me. 2 years since I decided to fight back. And I'm so glad I did. Because that cabin isn't just a building anymore. It's proof. Proof that I can stand up for myself. Proof that I won't be pushed around. Proof that good people can win when they refuse to give up. I still go up there almost every weekend. Sometimes alone, sometimes with friends or family. I've added more improvements. A new deck, a hot tub, a beautiful stone pathway leading down to a fire pit. I've planted a garden. I've hung hammocks between the trees. I've made it exactly what I always wanted it to be. My refuge, my sanctuary, my hard-won piece of peace. And every time I sit on that porch, looking out at the mountains, I think about Brenda, not with anger anymore, not even with satisfaction, really, just with a quiet certainty that I made the right choice. I didn't let her win. I didn't let her steal my dream. And that matters. That matters so much. So if you're listening to this and you're dealing with someone like Brenda, someone who's taking advantage of you, harassing you, making you feel unsafe in your own space, I want you to hear this. You have more power than you think. Document everything. Every incident, every conversation, every expense, every violation. Take photos, save emails and texts, record dates and times. Build an unshakable record of what's happening. Stay calm. Don't match their chaos. Don't scream back. Don't threaten. Don't sink to their level. Be the rational one. Be the one who can stand in front of a judge or police officer and calmly present facts. Follow through. File reports. Press charges is necessary. Get lawyers if you need them. Don't let exhaustion or frustration make you quit halfway through. See it all the way to the end. And remember, you're not being difficult. You're not being unreasonable. You're protecting yourself and your property and your peace of mind. And you have every right to do that. People like Brenda count on you giving up. They count on you being too nice, too polite, too tired to fight. Don't give them that satisfaction. Stand your ground. Protect your boundaries. Fight for what's yours. Because at the end of the day, quiet courage wins. Truth wins. Persistence wins. Every single time. Before I finish, I want to say something to all of you who've made it this far in my story. This is Revenge Stories, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If you feel my words, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Help us build this community so we can bring more interesting and exciting stories for you from around the world. Your help is much appreciated. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with someone like Brenda? Someone who thought they could take advantage of you because you were new, or quiet, or too polite to fight back? How did you handle it? What would you have done differently? Tell me in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Tell me your story, because it matters. You matter. And if you're going through something like this right now, if you're dealing with theft or harassment or someone who just won't respect your boundaries, please know that you're not alone. There are people who understand. There are resources to help you. And you are stronger than you think. Don't let anyone steal your peace. Don't let anyone make you feel small or powerless in your own life. You have a voice. Use it. You have rights. Protect them. You have courage. Trust it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, your story matters just as much as mine. Your quiet courage deserves to be heard. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never ever let anyone steal what's rightfully yours. This is Melissa Harper, and this is Revenge Stories. Your voice matters here.